All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Monetizing Your Mental Capital. I'm actually really excited. I have Dan with us today. I'm gonna tell you his last name here in just a second. But I was asking Dan, like, how do I say your name? Just because I want to make sure that I say this correctly. And he was like, it's Dan.
Got to bring out the dad jokes early, you know.
Well, I mean, he said it's Dan. I was like, oh, come on. He totally pulled me in hook, line, and sinker. And then he said his last name is Meszaros, and I actually said it incorrectly the first time. And I'm going to let him explain how to say his name and a little bit of where that came from.
Yeah, for sure. So we've always just said Meszaros because that's what's been passed down to the family. It's actually originally Meszaros, Hungarian name. My dad, I'm a first generation American. He came here from Hungary, him and his brothers and his parents, to escape communism, essentially, in the 50s. And when they got here, they didn't speak English. And so, they really had like this burning desire to really assimilate and anglicize as quickly as possible. And so that's how they started saying it, even though like looking at it from a spelling perspective, if you were to look at that and just read it, you'd say Meszaros, which is what we get that often. Like I just respond to like M followed by any letter of any number of syllables. I'm like, yeah, that's
Here.
Probably us. But at any rate, that's kind of the origin story of the name. So we say Meszaros. If you want to be very technical, you say Meszaros, but we don't require that of anybody. We don't even say it in our own house anymore. So
there you go. Unless you're explaining it to somebody else about how it all works. So Dan, you and I met each other through, I believe, would you call him a co-founder? Would you call him like how do you fit into this whole sphere of, rolling up into scale and the agency that it is now?
So it's actually a pretty vast business / ownership group, if you will. Other folks who should 100% be on your target list for the podcast if you haven't had them on yet. But myself and we'll call them the Needham brothers, JL Needham and Scott Needham, we are all business partners and we run different functions of the business together. So JL is the principal for an outfit called Ascendant, which is like a boutique aggregator that's actually performing really well and surviving despite all of the aggregated news of people dying, because they approached it in a much different way. Like, let's not raise billions of dollars of capital and then spend it all nefariously and not be able to operate it. They did slow, precise acquisitions, and now they own, 7 brands that they're operating. You have Scott, who owns Buyboxer, who is a wholesaler, as well as his main focus right now is Smart Scout, a software tool. And then there's myself, who runs the services side of it. So we basically figured, hey, we do Amazon well. Let's do all aspects of Amazon well. So we'll have a software piece, we'll have actual products, and we'll have a service arm as well. And so that's the core of the ownership group. One person that I'm leaving out of there, but must mention their name, is the current operating CEO of Scale, Tyler Weiss. He's an absolute e-commerce baller. I poached him after he sold his brand. So I said, come over here. You're working with me now. We're good friends. And I trust him explicitly. So now he's running the agency full time for us right now. So that's kind of the conglomerate of the group.
I love that. So it's been a journey. And I know Scott well. I know JL not as well, but I know JL. Scott and I tend to run into each other, just depending on what we're doing more times than not. I had him on my podcast and he had me on his podcast, and we've kind of bounced back and forth a couple times around different pieces. So 100% there. Okay. So tell me, Dan, where did this all start for you? Did the Needham brothers meet you in a dark alley and they were like, you are now part of the conglomerate? Or what did that look like?
Okay, so this is actually a really funny story. But there's kind of two angles to it, right? So the first one is like my personal journey into Amazon kind of happened accidentally. I was in school. I was studying marketing. My like whole ambition and idea of what marketing was is to like one day create a Super Bowl commercial. Like that's what it was in my mind. And then as I entered the schooling for this, I learned that it's way different than that. And that like Super Bowl commercials is one very small arm of a big marketing monster. And I had a focus in kind of business analytics because I knew that like this whole concept of like data was rising at the same time as e-commerce. And when I was attending school, like, yeah, Amazon existed and Facebook existed, but they hadn't yet become like these commerce giants that they are at this point.
Mm.
And so I got hired onto the marketing team of this company here in Utah called Maloof. And that was the original position. But very shortly into that, they were like, we want to get things rolling on Amazon. Will you jump onto a different team? I'm like, sure. Like, I'm a new kid out of college. I'm getting paid. I'm just going to do whatever you guys tell me. Like, sure. And so we moved some things around and created this Amazon team and started launching products on Amazon. And back in that day, like Amazon was easy mode 100%. Just like put stuff up there, give away free products for reviews, and then just watch stuff fly off the shelves. And
I remember a lot of people making good money in those days, and then a lot of people getting messed over because everything changed.
Dude, I'm telling, like, the numbers that we were generating and the growth trajectory which we were on was utterly shocking. We were doing, within 18 months, we were doing about 400K a day in sales.
Wow.
400K a day. And we were just pumping containers and containers of product out as fast as we could. And it was easy. It was the easiest thing in the whole world to do this. Then as time goes on, we know it got more and more complex. Like when we started selling, I'm telling you that like there was no sponsored products. There was list the product, get reviews, and then the product would just sell. So as things, FBA and sponsored products and like the complexity increased, we ourselves had to evolve with that and become better. So within that experience, I became an Amazon expert, so to speak. There's lots of experts out there, but I've sold lots of stuff on Amazon.
I smell an asterisk there.
I've built some of the largest brands, and at the time, the largest three brands in the home and kitchen bedding category on Amazon. Then I get this random DM from this dude named JL Needham that I've never heard in my life. I was like, hey, I heard you like Amazon. I want to take other Amazon nerds to lunch and chat Amazon. I'm like, okay, whatever. Sure. Sounds great. And we schedule in this lunch. That night that he sends me the DM, I go to a summer softball game because one of my things that I love to do is I love to play baseball, but I don't play baseball anymore. So softball is the thing that itches that. And I get there and we play this game and we utterly dismantle this team. It's like 35-0. We mercy them or whatever. The next day I show up to lunch and the first person I recognize is the first baseman from the team that we destroyed that night. And it was JL Needham. And his opening line to me at that lunch was, well, I'm glad we're having lunch so I can see if there's an actual human inside that body of yours. and not from like the physical specimen side, because I'm like a lanky piece of spaghetti, but whatever.
But from the performance side, apparently yeah, you guys did well.
Like, are we able to show mercy? Like, that's what he was trying to find out. Is there a human trait in there of mercy and kindness because
Is
there
there a
was
shred of
none.
human kindness in that
Yeah,
body?
because there was none the night before. So that's how I met JL, and we've been business partners ever since.
That's a fantastic way to start the game. And I love that like neither one of you had any clue that's who the other person was.
We had no idea who each other was on the field. No
That's
idea.
way funny. That's almost better than like a blind date story. Like you end up the next day, it's like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
karma.
Whoops. Do you still want to be my business partner? I mean, I can exceed goals, as you can see. I don't know. It was funny. We laugh about it often. Is that like our origin story was from a pummeling on a baseball field?
Mm-hmm. And as you opened up that journey, and it sounds like you two ended up hitting it off, and you left Maloof, and you have since joined his team, ran the services side. I mean,
Yeah.
what got you to where you are now? It sounds like there's a few more stones in the road.
Yeah. So at that time, we had determined basically there was an interest to be involved with each other in some way. And at his time, he had conceptualized the idea of launching an agency, and he wanted me to be the leader of said agency. And at the time, I had already been committed to another startup here in Utah to go kind of run and get their Amazon off the ground. But so I was like, hey, as far as like personality wise and partnership goes, all on board. Timing wise, let's wait a little bit. So I went and worked for this outfit called And So Rings, which is another fun part of the origin story. I'm a storyteller. And so here we go. Buckle up. And So Rings sells silicone wedding bands. I'm wearing one right now. I'm a big time nerd. Not that this is relevant information at all, but I'm going to show you. It happens to be the one ring to
The
rule
One
them all.
Ring. That is,
Yes.
yeah. No, Glammed Ring's up on the wall right here, so I'm in that. Yes, yeah.
Our
Not far
friendship
off.
just went 1,000 levels deeper without even like knowing it.
There you go.
Yes.
So, and there may or may not be a Klingon batleth hanging on the wall above it. So, yes, I
Okay.
agree with the nerddom.
I knew I was in the right place. I could sense it. So anyway, Enso Rings, they sell silicone wedding bands, but they are significantly priced higher than any other silicone wedding band on Earth because the barrier to entry to that product is like so minimal. You could go to Alibaba today, right now, get 10,000 units sent to your front door. Those 10,000 units will fit in one box. You could put them on FBA. But they had a unique selling proposition and some proprietary tech. So I wanted to take this opportunity to prove not only to myself, but to them that luxury brands and the price isn't the only thing that matters on Amazon, that you can make a name for yourself in other ways.
Okay.
And we built this brand to doing $50 million total between Shopify and Amazon with about a 40-60 split. Shopify was the majority. 40% was Amazon at selling rings that were 10x whatever the competition was on Amazon. Now, one of the precursor questions that you kind of sprinkled to me before this was like, what was my entrepreneurial moment where I realized like I wanted to go off and do something not necessarily with a W-2, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It was when we had the opportunity to take Enso Rings onto Shark Tank.
Oh.
And we actually got an investment from Robert Herjavec, who is an Eastern European who immigrated during the 50s to escape communism and built a name for himself. And I felt like I was staring my dad in the eyes, like when I was talking to this guy. And that's when I just knew, like, I would prefer to be more like this guy here than like just a typical worker in the marketplace. Because his origin story was so similar to my dad's. So for my dad took a different route. He did what he could. He was never prosperous. He just did what he could to provide his family with a life, and he worked the same government job for 50 years, retired, got his pension, like took that route. But that's what he could do in order to get us the life that we provided.
Yeah.
And so when I saw a different way of doing that, it's like Robert is the same age as my dad, took a different path, and had significantly more monetary success. Not to discount anything that my dad does,
Right.
because he's one of the hardest workers on earth. He just chose a different path,
Right.
but it allowed me to see the path that I preferred, which is I'm going to go try and build something on my own.
Interesting. So that was kind of that moment of like, oh, okay, I'm going to go do this.
Yeah, that was the aha, was when I put together that he has a very similar story. It's actually freakishly similar because my dad immigrated to Canada first and then to the US. And Robert went from Croatia to Canada.
And then to
And
the
then
US.
now he's home based in Canada, but he has businesses in both the US and Canada. So
Okay.
in short, the North America, so to speak, gave my family and his family opportunity.
Love it. So I want you to think back on your journey. When was the first time you monetized mental capital? So I totally can hear that this is the moment where you were like, you know what? I'm doing the entrepreneur thing. When was the first time? Was it a lemonade stand? Was it, when was the first time you monetized mental capital?
Oh, you're talking total, not just like specific to Amazon, like my entire life.
Yeah, it could be, or if you feel like the story about when you did it on with your Amazon knowledge. So the listeners are e-commerce sellers, and so
Right.
they'll be all over that in a bag of chips. But yeah, whichever direction you want to go with it.
Short, both. I'll keep the first one really short. The first time I ever decided to do something entrepreneurial was when I decided that I wanted to be a golfer. That's what I want to do. My mom was like, when I was 7 years old, she said, "Hey, what sport do you want to play?" And at the time, like Tiger Woods was on the rise. This was early '90s, and Tiger Woods was coming. And I was like, "I want to be a golfer." And she's like, "You realize that we are A, poor, and B, don't have money to play golf. And so if you want to do golf, I'll support you in that, but you have to provide half of the money for all of your clubs and half of the money for all of your lessons and half of the money for all this. So you got to figure out how to do that." So as a very young kid, I got a newspaper route and asked my parents if I could harvest the plum trees that we had in our backyard. And so every morning at 6 a.m., I would wake up and deliver my newspapers. And with me, I would drag a wagon of plums. And if there was anybody out in the morning, because, sometimes they're out when you throw the paper to their porch and, "Hey, you want a bag of plums?" And I'd sell them a bag of plums. That was like my first foray into entrepreneurship. And she said, my mom was like, "Why do you have such interest in golf?" And I told her as a 7-year-old, "Because, Mom, all business deals are done on the golf course."
As a 7-year-old.
As a 7-year-old. I earned my money, got my golf, got my lessons, and I've been golfing ever since. I have yet, because of now this new digital age where like all business deals are done through freaking,
Zoom.
what's that? Yeah, Zoom and the signing service.
DocuSign.
Yeah, now all business deals are done through DocuSign. I have yet to actually like get a business deal on a golf course. It's a bucket list for me. So any listeners out there who are like, "Hey, I want to do some deals with Dan." Yes, let's do it, but it has to be on a golf course, please.
It has to be on a golf course.
We have to realize this childhood dream of mine. In terms of Amazon, this is hilarious. People are going to laugh so much at this. I realized that I had a skill, and there was a brand here in the town that I'm living in that was getting ready to launch on Amazon. Their name is Boo-Ray.
Boo-Ray.
And they asked me for some Amazon help and if I would consult for them. I had no idea what I was doing. I said, "Yeah, I'll consult for you," because I know Amazon, but I've never done consulting or anything like that. I charged them $30 an hour for Amazon consulting.
Wow.
I gave them millions and millions. of dollars of advice. And I think I made, I don't know, $150 off of the transaction because we did like 5 hours of consulting, and then they felt like they were kind of in a place that they could go figure out the rest on
Yeah.
their own.
You've basically unlocked this door of millions of dollars. Thanks. See ya.
And they were acquired 2 years ago for a good amount.
So what you're saying is you may have left some money on the table there.
Maybe just a little bit, but I was young and I didn't know and I was naive.
Yeah. Yeah.
I grew up in Utah where everybody's a cheapskate.
Oh man, are
And
they ever?
and yeah, everybody here's looking for a deal. Like
I can say that because so just in case everybody's like, oh my gosh, he's so rude to Utahns. For those of you who didn't know, I'm in Utah as well. So
Utahns are always looking for a deal. Period.
yep, always looking for a deal. Okay, so
So
what would you say as you dug into monetizing this knowledge? I love that $30 an hour stories. Everybody's got a story like that where they left
yeah,
some serious money on the table. And that's how you learn, right? Like you get down the road and you're like, oh, I'll never do that again. Like I think I did like engagements for $40 one time. Like I was a wedding photographer kind of thing. Yeah, like wedding photos. And I charged them $40 and I was like, how about $40? And I walked away and I was like, okay, that went okay. And then I found out like everybody else was charging $300-400 or more. Yeah. And
you charge them $40 and then you filled up your gas tank and was like, whoops.
Yeah, well, I honestly wasn't sure that they were that good, you know? I mean, it was one of those moments. It's just the nature of it, man. You don't know until you know, and then you get in there. So tell me a little bit about these journeys of monetizing knowledge. You know, obviously when you got thrown into Maloof and they were like, hey, go figure this out, you were being paid to learn how to do something. You gained a valuable skill, which you then took out into multiple places to go create a career for yourself, to dig out into these different sides. What would you say are some of the biggest roadblocks you've run into as you've begun to or tried to monetize that knowledge?
That's a good question. I mean, I've talked about one of them briefly, obviously, like not knowing what you don't know. Like building an agency and a service-based business is supremely different from running a product-based business. Like way different. And I do actually have preferences. I really prefer the brand side and like working with the actual products and the brand and the positioning and whatnot, which is why I've hired a CEO now to operate the agency, because I don't have a deep burning passion for, you know, agency work and client work and whatnot. I have a deep burning desire for the brands. And so that's where I stay involved, is in providing brand strategy, marketing, positioning, et cetera, for the brands, not actually executing the day-to-day operations of what it takes to build an agency. So the whole process of learning how to build a service-based business as it compares to a product-based business was like the learning curve of 1,000 miles. For the first year of scale, we freaking dirtled. Like there was no money made, zero profit, because we were, I think like one of the biggest roadblocks was myself, like just being a yes man. It was like, client comes, says, you want to do work together? I say yes. Client comes, you want to do work together? Yes. 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 And so we amassed very quickly, when I first started Scale, we amassed a huge catalog of brands very quickly. But 80% of those brands were not good brands. And no matter what, you could have the best Amazon operator on earth, which I do believe I'm one of them, operating these brands, and they're not going to push the needle for various reasons. Like there's so many reasons. And so like really dialing in quickly what our ideal client profile was, and then just shutting off any effort towards anybody who fell out of that ideal client profile. So we handed off tons of brands to different agencies. Like, are you looking for somebody like this? Here you go. You're looking for somebody like this? Here you go. And then just focusing in and marketing specifically to our ideal client profile has completely changed the agency. We now have a much smaller load of brands
Mm,
in terms of sheer numbers,
mm,
but our revenue's way higher and our profits way higher because our relationships are good, our results are good, what we're delivering is good because we know what we do best. And so that's like one of the biggest roadblocks any entrepreneur will. And I mean, honestly, this is just business 101, right? Is like, what is the problem you solve?
mm-hmm,
Who do you solve it for?
mm-hmm,
And then how do you sell that solution to them?
mm-hmm.
Solve those three questions and you will have a good business.
Well, and the funny thing is, I don't know about you, Dan, but I remember when I very first started my first service agency, service-based business. You asked me what are those three questions, I could tell you, right? And mine was an automation agency. So it was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, who do you help businesses? What do you do for them? We automate stuff. And how do you sell it to them? We bring them stuff and talk to them on the phone. So that one wasn't as well. Oh, no, we get referrals from Zapier. That was so I answered those three questions and I was like, I am so good at this. I didn't realize that businesses, like, who do you automate this for, is not niche enough. Like that was my biggest problem, was recognizing that like you can't just say, oh, I help Amazon sellers. Lots of people think that's niche enough, and so did you. What was it that made you realize, like, no, like, I need to drill way down to be more specific?
Yeah, so we found a few different things that worked for us, categories that we liked playing in and that we had more domain expertise in. So for us, that included anything in like the bedding realm, because that's the stock that I came from. Anything in baby, that's the stock Tyler came from. He sold his baby brand off for a good amount. And so anything baby, anything bedding, and then arts, toys, and crafts was another place where we had done really, really well.
I've got this mental picture of you and Tyler standing next to each other, and one of you has like this betting symbol on your chest, and the other one's got a baby symbol, like betting and baby. Like,
Yes, our
yes,
superhero alter
yes,
egos.
yes, I can see it now.
Yeah. Luckily for my alter ego, really easy costume. I just take a sheet, tie it around my neck. There's your Amazon betting guy. Tyler puts a pacifier in his mouth. He's an Amazon baby.
Yep.
Just kidding. At any rate, so like we nailed down the categories that we were really good at, and then we narrowed down even like what stage in a product life cycle are we really good at.
Mm.
We are really freaking good at early stage business. So some of the brands that we've launched on Amazon, specifically launching, and like most people will hear this, most agency, if there are any agencies, people who are listening to this, which there probably are quite a few who listen to this, will be like, new launches, like we say no to all new launches because it's so much thrust and most people monetize based off of growth.
Mm-hmm.
And when your growth is zero, it's like, how do you get the upside? There's so much initial thrust to get an Amazon product off the ground.
Yeah.
There's no upside. But we launched, so what we focus on is brands who are e-commerce native within those categories who haven't yet launched on Amazon. So they've already developed some kind of name for themselves. And then we help them with all of the operations to get them set up and launched on Amazon. And then our contracts are 12 months. We run you for a year and then you can do whatever you want.
Mm.
And in most cases, we work ourselves out of a job.
Right.
Exhibit A, True Classic Tees. We launched True Classic Tees on Amazon and got them set up and they were off to the races and we're absolutely killing it for them. And a year later, they're like, guys, this is great. We love it. You've developed a huge revenue line for us. We are hiring it internally. Sweet. That's what the agreement said. That's what we do is we help you get your feet under you for Amazon. And we've done that for countless brands. Now we have a lot of brands that are evergreen and enjoy our management services and they stay with us and they don't want to hire internally and that's fine. And we're really well equipped to continue into the next life cycle. But what we're really good at is getting somebody off the ground in Amazon.
hold on. So you, how did you figure that out? How did you figure out what you were really, really, like you said, what we're really good at is taking you
Yeah.
from 0 to 60 when you don't yet have anything on Amazon, but you have some sort of presence already in the e-commerce space. How did you figure out that that's what you were good at?
Good. Yeah. Good question. A few fold. First one, a lot of failures. There's not a single agency on earth who does not have a handful of clients that absolutely despise them and hate them.
Because they
And
just dropped the ball hard, or
I'll be the
they.
first to admit, yeah, I'll be the first to admit we have had launches that have fallen flat on their face. So like the first step was like, there's been a couple failures that we've had to take on the chin and learn from those and grow from those. From those failures come other opportunities. The two big ones that really kind of set us off.
Mm-hmm.
JL's first acquisition, he was just like, he had yet to build Ascendant into its own operating team. His vision was to always have a team with Ascendant that could operate the brands that he acquires. He had yet to get there, and he had purchased this brand off of an auction because the owners had died, and there
Oh
was
wow.
like nothing in the will and testament to where the brand was supposed to go. And so it just went to a government auction, and JL happened to see it and was like, I kind of like this product profile. We're going to buy it. It's in arts and crafts. So he bought it. He didn't have an Ascendant team yet. And so he had us port it over to Amazon and launch it for him and really help it in its kind of early days on Amazon. And we had great success doing that. So that was kind of the first indicator of like, hey, we can do this launch thing. And then,
Isn't it interesting how I love that you've isn't it interesting how we often come across what we're really good at even by mistake?
oh yeah,
Like that wasn't an intentional, okay, we are going to go figure out what we're really good at. It was like, we're going to go do a whole bunch of stuff, but we're going to pay attention to what we fail at and what we succeed at. And we're going to narrow until we've nailed it.
yeah,
And now, like, your identity is crystal clear. Like, we
yeah,
are the guys you go to when you want to launch a brand on Amazon that has some traction in the e-commerce space already.
yeah. It's really important to be really intellectually honest. And like when you suck at something, just be like, yeah, well, I'm not that good at that. So
I
we're
am
not we're not
not
going to
not that good at that.
we're not going to focus on that. So there was that, and then one of our legacy brands actually came to us with a major challenge that their Amazon presence was really starting to piss off their pardon my French, sorry, bleep, make mad all of their brick and
Trust me,
mortar.
here in Utah, that was pretty coarse, but I've had all people all over the board, so go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what you rate your own podcast.
I don't actually know if I rate it either, but go
Okay.
for it.
Well, you know, harsher words have been known to slip out occasionally. So, but anyway, one of our legacy brands that we have been managing for a while was making their brick and mortar people really mad. And so they came to us with, hey, we want to launch a same product line, different mark, different brand. We're essentially white labeling, right? We're going to do a different line, different name, similar product lineup, packaged differently, all that stuff. And we want to launch it on Amazon. So big thanks to them for giving us a chance with their new baby. We were also hesitant because we had developed a significant revenue line because they were a legacy client of ours that we're doing so well with. So we're like, are you guys, I know you guys are making your brick and mortar people mad, but do you really want to dilute your Amazon sales potentially? Because our attention, shocker, agencies don't have infinite amount of hours for every single client. So some attention is going to be diverted away from your already flourishing Amazon business. And like, that's fine. This is what we want to do. We think this is the right strategy. We took that brand to 6 figures in its first month. And then now it is a high 8-figure brand in the course of 18 months. And we're like, whoa, we can really we can do this. We know how to get new products launched on Amazon. Now, the big caveat to this is they have to fall within the ideal client profile, which we have very rigorous vetting for, because at the core of everything, it has to be a good product that solves a problem for a target audience. You can't just list crap on Amazon and make lots of money. You can list crap on Amazon and have it sell.
Used to be. Well, yeah, that's true. You can still actually even sell crap on Amazon.
Yeah, you can sell stuff. Anybody can launch whatever they want on Amazon and sell stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But making a sustainable brand that actually makes you money, contributes to society, not easy.
Got it. So narrowing, I think, is the overarching structure or thought that's come from our discussion of like, how do I become more successful in monetizing my mental capital? It's about narrowing. It's about recognizing what you've done well, what you haven't done well, and narrowing down. Any other strategies that are coming to mind beyond narrowing and elimination? I host another podcast called Automate, Delegate, Eliminate. I would call that like eliminate. Any other strategies, and I just threw out automate and delegate, but any other strategies that come to mind for you as you consider scale in your journey?
It's going to sound so cliche, but it is a key to a lot of our success has been just networking. If you have developed a specific skill that you're really good at, people need to know about it. And there's a way of going about it that's more authentic and genuine than it is salesy.
Tell me more.
I'm a very active person in the business community in Utah. I go to events, even if they're not Amazon specific. If it's a buddy of mine who has a big thing at an event, I go to support. Like, it's just about being and giving in the community as much as you can. And then stuff just comes out of the woodwork from that. Yes, we have very traditional sales channels. We do ads. We have a business development team. We do cold emailing. We do cold calling. But the majority of the great relationships that have really served both parties have come from me going to a dinner one night with a guy who had some Amazon questions, and I'm just like pro bono. Yeah, let's chat and have a good time. And I don't have ulterior motives. He wants information from me. I'm not trying to land you as a client. I'm just trying to be a person who gives a little bit. So my rate went from $30 to $0.
And I won.
And a lunch.
All right, Dan, I love that. So narrowing and then being genuine and authentic in your networking, outreaching. If you want to hear, so a coach of mine recommended that I listen to, if you look up Tim Ferriss and his approach to networking, he actually spoke. So if you Google Tim Ferriss approach to networking, South by Southwest or whatever, if you Google that, it'll come right up. He's got an episode where it's actually a presentation he gave on networking to a bunch of people at a conference. And it's freaking awesome. Just what it says about literally being genuine. So 100% agree with you. All right. Shifting here for just a second, Dan. Let's imagine that you could make a phone call back to little Dan. So you could call back in time to little Dan, and little Dan he's actually nailing it. He just got his third bag of plums sold, and he's finishing up his paper route, and the phone rings and it's you. And you get to say, hey, little Dan, this is older Dan from the future. What would you tell him to help him upskill or up-level his journey in monetizing mental capital?
Take all your money and go buy land in St. George.
Go buy land in St. George. So it's actually interesting. You're totally good. The Bitcoin is usually the go-to. Either, invest in Bitcoin, or here's an almanac from from this year that tells you what all the sports numbers were. There's always interesting quid pro quo. But what would you tell him?
Yeah, obviously being a little jokester there, but for reals, like St. George land back in the 90s, you could buy it for like $1,000 an acre. And now those things are selling for $1 million an acre, whatever. this actually kind of stems more into somewhat parenting advice, I would say,
I
as
like it.
opposed to like business advice, because I'm in the thick of it. We're about to have our fourth boy here in a few months, and I have three other boys. So like I'm thinking about what I would say to myself as well as like what I would say to them.
Okay, I like it.
It's that society is going to tell you to be well-rounded, have some music and some leadership and some business and some of this so that you can have a good resume and you can get a scholarship and blah, 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 blah. That's what society is going to tell you, is to be well-rounded, which is there's a place for that. I believe that all children should have their brains mentally stimulated in many different ways. But the advice that I would give to my younger self is find something that you want to be elite at earlier. Get really good at something earlier. Because I look at all of the people who were the best in the world at everything they did, and it required a certain level of focus when they were young.
Hmm.
And maybe it's just that people are wired differently. Like there's some people who just have the brain to be able to focus on one particular love or desire or passion really early on in their life.
Yeah.
But I don't like, do you ever think like Simone Biles is sad that she's the best gymnast on earth?
Probably
Do you ever think
not.
she's sad about that? No. Sure, there's probably been, mental strain and trauma and stuff that went into doing that. But once you've had that level of achievement, there's got to be this level of self-actualization that is unmatched. Like you're the best in the world at something. And so that's what I would like. It's like in your process of developing and being a young child and coming to and exploring all these awesome things that the world has to offer, find one thing that you just put a little extra effort into to become elite at.
I like it. It goes right back to what you've said earlier about narrowing, right? Like
Yeah.
choose to narrow the scope and the field of what you're going to do, what you're going to build faster. I think that's totally solid. All right, last question here. Any tips, tricks, hacks, or books that you've come across in the past year that have helped you up level your ability to monetize your mental capital?
Yes.
Okay.
I got two.
Two. All right. So scribble those down on a piece of paper real quick because I'm going to ask you to do something else before you share those two, and this other exercise could blow those out of the water. So let me know when you got it.
Okay. Noted down.
Beautiful. So now what I want you to pretend to do, because right after this exercise, you're going to go back to those tip, tricks, hacks, or books. I want you to pretend that you've just walked into an elevator and the elevator is about to go up. You got 60 seconds. The guy next to you is like, yeah, we've got this outdoor retailer brand and we're really good on Shopify, but we don't know how to do Amazon yet. That's what he says to you. Something along those lines. And you got 60 seconds because the elevator is going up and I am timing you. So 60 seconds. What do you tell him?
The first step in anything is being a good listener. And so exploratory questions like, all right, tell me a little bit more about like your thought process of wanting to even go to Amazon in the first place. Like, why are you thinking of this?
I mean, it's a channel that everybody else uses.
Okay. And is that as much as you thought about it? Is it like everybody's there, or like, is there a specific business need that you're trying to fulfill?
All of our major competitors are on Amazon.
Okay, so you're trying to get with the competitors, but this doesn't necessarily have to do with diversifying revenue, right? Like, are you guys doing pretty well?
Yeah, we're doing great.
Sweet. That's awesome. That's a great place to be in, is like wanting to just go where, honestly, all of the shoppers are. I've helped lots of brands do that
10
before.
seconds and then the elevator doors are opening.
Let's talk soon because I can help you blow up your brand on Amazon.
All right.
So much to get into here.
You're totally good. Okay.
Wow, so, that's faster than I thought.
Isn't that crazy how fast that 1 minute goes?
Yeah.
All right. So now, and I think honestly, the people who've been listening to this episode, you've talked a little bit about some of your success there. So I don't worry. I don't think they'll be judging you too much on your 60 seconds. Your two hacks, tips, tricks, or books that you've come across in the past year.
actually a book that I read this year has now, for me, become required reading for everybody I come in contact with. I'm like, you must read this. Like, second to my own theological and religious beliefs, this is like the most important book in my life. It's called The Obstacle is the Way. It's basically taking Stoicism by Marcus Aurelius and just kind of distilling it into a more digestible way instead of like, Latin, obviously. Yeah, it becomes more digestible. And then the actual illustrations and the stories of individuals shared in this, like, oh, I feel so inspired every time. Every time I listen to a section of this book, like, no matter what challenge that I'm ready to face that day, it feels like the obstacle is the way. So that's the book. Overall, like, something that hit me pretty hard, sounds kind of lame, but it's just something that's really impressed on me this year. We're in January, New Year's resolutions, right? And it sounds oxymoronic, but I ran into a TikTok where the illustration of this TikTok was, what if your phone was a book? And it's like this guy who comes out of bed and the first thing he does is he unplugs a book from the wall and slaps it on his face. And then he goes and he sits on the toilet and he's reading a book. And then he's eating breakfast and he's reading a book. So it is basically just illustrating how hilarious it is that as humanity, we've now turned into this instead of anything else. And so, like, the tip that I've kind of tried to implement in my life that I think everybody should implement is, like, find 10 minutes a day of more disciplined time. Don't think that you have to just all of a sudden become the most disciplined person in the world. I'm super ADD. It's really hard for me. I'm like this creative mind that like wants to do things, that gets distracted by squirrels all the time because I have 1,000 ideas and I'm running multiple businesses and I have my own brands that I'm trying to run, and like it gets kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So the way that I would surmise all of this is discipline in digestible chunks. Choose 10 minutes a day where you are just a little bit more disciplined than the 10 minutes the day before.
Love it. 10 minutes a day. Awesome. I think that's a fantastic hack, tip, or trick. It falls into all three of those categories. Dan, how can our listeners reach out to connect with you?
LinkedIn is the best place. Dan Meszaros. There's two of us on LinkedIn, I think. One is a 3D graphic designer in Hungary who's freakishly talented, and we've connected and we chat often. And then there's me in Utah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you joining us on Monetizing Your Mental Capital.
Thanks for having me.